Hello, Grandma.
Do I say got it by
We're
staying in?
rolling. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, you're great. The show is active.
well, I can't see you.
You can't see me.
There now. Now I can.
All right, great. Well, everybody, this is my Grandma Jean, and she has graciously agreed to come on the show. So, Grandma, um, thank you for coming on. And if you could tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Hi, Nolan. It's wonderful to be here with you. And I'm in Boulder, Colorado. I am thinking a lot about the length of my life, and going through it has been very interesting for me. And I have concentrated mostly on learning what I don't know in my life. I have 3 master's degrees and I still don't feel educated.
What are your master's degrees in?
In elementary education, and in creative writing, and in grief counseling, psychology, and support.
Lovely. Well, that is a huge goal for anybody to achieve. So that's great work. I really admire that.
Thanks.
Yes, of course. So, first question for you is actually one that you brought up earlier on the phone, which I'm really excited to ask about, is how have you directed yourself in the past and met challenges that you were not prepared for?
Wow. Mostly with gusto. I have been blessed with many unforeseen challenges, and I didn't know how to deal with them. But what I have done is just to get calm and trust whatever my inner teacher is telling me to do. And it's all often in pictures, and it's often at night. And I just lead with love and with trust and with respect and willingness to make mistakes, because that's how I find out what the path that I was on was not correct, and that helps me get to the new path.
That's awesome. Is there a time in your life that especially sticks out to you, that you've been dealt unforeseen challenges that you would care to speak on?
Oh yeah, just growing up in a family where my parents were not happy allowed me to just find my own peaceful places, and that was often on my own. I would wander in the neighborhood, and I found a barn where there was a horse, and I got permission to muck out the stall in order to be able to ride the horse. I grew up and wanted to marry a rancher and have horses. So I went to Washington State University, the Cow College of Washington, and met my husband, Chuck. And I had no idea how to be in relationship, because all I had seen was discord and animosity between my parents. So what marriage was a whole different story for me. And fortunately, my husband's parents were ranchers from a long time ago, and they knew how to love each other and to figure life out. And so Chuck did too. And Chuck became a consultant and was flying in order to reach all the places he had to go. And his plane crashed in 1976. And I was left with the ranch that I loved, but didn't know how to do it all by myself. That was a big shock. I left the ranch and went to be near family and friends in Seattle. And
Whoa. All right. Thank you for all of that, Grandma. There's a lot to unpack there, and I would love to start at the point of you. Actually, let's start there. You were inspired by hanging out with the horses, yeah?
yeah,
And as a result of that, that's how you decided that you wanted to marry a rancher when you thought of a
yes,
partner, right?
yes,
That's awesome. And then through that you made the decision to go to college in Washington where there were ranchers.
yes.
What was that decision like for you? Because for what I'm getting at is, for a lot of people, including myself, that's a learned skill to understand what brings you joy and to really follow it. And how did that come about naturally to you, to really follow your heart in that direction?
It did. It was totally natural. And I was in the middle of my freshman and sophomore years during Christmas, and met Chuck, and he told me he was the oldest of a farm family in Eastern Washington, and he had 5 siblings. And I said, wow, I was madly in love with this guy.
That's nice. That's awesome. Yeah. And how young were you when you met Chuck?
I was 17 and a half, and I married when I was 19.
Wow, that's a different time.
And Chuck was 22. I knew
Nice.
I was too young to know anything about marriage, but I knew that he knew, and he could teach me.
That's awesome. And yeah, it seems like you had faith.
I have such good faith in my intuition. It has never let me down, except for when I needed to have a lesson. And I said, what is this for, to myself? And I found out. And so it's always been there for me.
That's lovely. And when you met Chuck's parents, moving to when you were dating, I'm assuming, what was that like for you? How was that meeting your significant other's parents?
Well, I was expecting a tall rancher like Chuck was, and his father, from long years of working, was a small, bent over man. And and his mother was this Mother Earth person. They had homesteaded on the ranch in the 1940s. They knew everything about ranching, riding, cattle, baking, doing a big garden, everything that I wanted to learn. And my mother-in-law, Celia, just taught me everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was.
That's
They're the
really awesome.
best mentors I ever had.
Wow. Yeah. How is that carried over to where you are now with that sort of inspiration, if you call it that, of self-sufficiency and just being independent?
Well, that in addition to when Chuck died, I had no idea how to handle grief. And Chuck's parents were so devastated that when I went to tell them about him dying, they told me that they had already heard and they wanted me to get off the ranch and never come back and to leave my boys with them because I was from the coast and that's a different place that they don't know. And so I knew I had to take my boys and leave. And I knew that what they said was not necessarily what they felt, but they just had so much anger, which is the first reaction when they lose their oldest and most trustworthy child. They just can't get their heads around it. So I learned a lot about grief at that time. And then I went to school to find out more about the grief process. And that helped me. That was a great mentor for me. That was in Boulder, Colorado. That I became so relieved that I saw as they were explaining the grief process and how people go through it. There I was. I said, that's my path. And I had no idea about that before. And so I spent 4 years as an intern at the hospice in Boulder County. And I applied for the position at Boulder County Hospice of bereavement coordinator. And I had some wonderful years listening to the people telling me about their process and giving them creative art and movement activities and to put their grief into the objects that they were painting or cooking or dancing or writing, and that gave them space from.
Wow, that's very that's very nice. Still more to unpack. So you went through like something horrible that I would wish upon nobody, like your husband tragically dying and you being a single or widowed mother with two young boys, and that must be really scary. You went through this grief process, as did Chuck's parents, and what I find really intriguing about all of this is that instead of, because you didn't necessarily understand it as much as you did before you got your degree, correct?
Right.
You didn't understand something, and this is a huge thing for young people too, is like with anything, is when we don't understand something, it's really tempting to walk away from it.
Ah.
I see this with myself. If I'm reading a book and I don't understand a word, I sometimes don't look it up and just sneak past the word and push it aside because I don't want to feel stupid when I'm reading. But that's really cool to me that you're able to lean into something unknown and educate yourself about it. Did you have a moment where you knew that you had to learn more? What was
Yeah.
that like for you?
Yeah, I was walking around in grief, walking into walls, just in so much pain. and I didn't know what to do with it. And there in the training, it was called Death as a Spiritual Teacher. And I heard that and I said, yes, yes, my spirit's hungry to learn from this spiritual teacher. And the more I learned about it, the more I learned that my heart was so broken open that there were openings for a lot of learning to go in and the pain to drain out. And I wanted that.
Openings for a lot of learning to come in. That is an extremely open-minded way to talk about pain. Wow, I could learn from that quite a bit. That is insane in a good way, in a really good way. That's the most insane way I think I've heard anybody describe pain, is openings in your heart for learning to come in.
That's why they call it, you have a broken heart, because the universe or whoever guides you wants your heart to heal, and it can't heal if it's closed.
That's very nice, Grandma. I'm sure a lot of people will be really happy to hear that when this episode comes out. That's a great thing that you just shared.
Well, you have a choice, and I realized that 6 months into Chuck's death. I was in Seattle and feeling very much alone and overwhelmed with raising the boys and doing it right and working and going to school. And I found myself in the closet one day, just closing the door and sobbing, just curled up in a ball and sobbing. And then when I could catch my breath, I realized that I had a choice. Do I want to do it this way? Or do I want to open that door and go out and learn what this gift is to me? I think everything can be seen as a challenge or a gift. And the gift was that I needed some education.
Wow. Yeah, so from arguably, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but not the most, your parents, they didn't give you a ton of direction and like as to what they thought you might be good at or should do in your life.
Nothing.
No? Yeah, so you went from extremely little influence in terms of what you should do as a very young person to working on a ranch, which I hope everybody knows is probably one of the most badass jobs in the planet. Like, that's hard work. That's so hard. To extreme tragedy, a lot of pressure of raising young boys, and to be so open-minded to say, hey, I need education now. That's a lot of facets of life to be a part of, especially at a relatively young age.
Yeah. I decided I was big enough to do it, so I did it. And if I didn't know how to do it, I'd never learn if I didn't do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. A little conversation switch, but because it still has some flow. When my preface this, my grandma is my dad's mother, and when my dad eventually moved to Juneau, Alaska, and had my brother and I with my mom. My grandma was there to take care of Ben, my brother, and I when my parents were busy doing adult things. And you were truly a huge hand, and you still are a huge hand to our family, and we really appreciate you for that. What was that like, going into a extremely new part of life, of helping, essentially helping raise young boys that weren't your own but were your own?
The wonderful thing about that, Nolan, is that you and Ben were amazing duplicates of Bill and Brad. You guys looked the same at those ages. You acted the same. Brad was goofy, just like you were. And it was, for me, a beautiful gift to be able to have the experience of just being able to play with you guys with no responsibilities. I was just free to have fun and ask you guys what we were going to do that day and go do it. And I didn't have that freedom when Bill and Brad, your dad and uncle, were those ages, because I was working and young and trying to figure out my life. And I was distracted. I did as much as I could, but with you guys, it was like the universe paying me back for doing what the universe knew I could do, but didn't have a chance before.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, so you said exploration and asking us what we wanted to do. What were the what were some of the top things? I'm curious about your memory, because I was, well, a little kid, and I have a few memories of what we did. But what were some of the top things that Ben and I both wanted to do?
Well, understanding that, as you know, Juneau is a very small town and has very little in the way of entertainment things, but it has nature. It has wonderful woods to explore, and the sea is right there, going and looking in the tide pools and watching the birds dive for the salmon, and just becoming familiar with nature. Well, that was a lot of it. There's a hatchery, salmon fat hatchery, that we spent time at. Saw all kinds of animals that we normally didn't see under the sea. And we went bowling. They built a climbing wall, and you guys and I climbed. Learned to belay each other, and I liked the psychological impact of that, putting your life in someone else's hands and helping them and securing them. It was a symbol of how to live your life, and I was living my life that way a lot of times when I traveled, and you too learned how to do that, and you still are just the best buddies for taking care of each other and being there for each other.
Yeah, that's, I think that's something that has, I mean, sure, we were like that as younger brothers, and Ben and I definitely, as people do, we grew apart in high school a little bit, and in middle school, where we had our own interests. And the I think really mountain biking Ben and I were talking about this on a couple of episodes ago, but mountain biking really brought us closer together as brothers, and as you were saying, just being there for each other. And I don't anymore than moving back there, but lived in Bozeman for some time, and I think that's really valuable. That's a great point that you brought up.
And skiing. We skied a bunch. And the ski hill was so close to where we lived, 30 minutes away. And I always was concerned about you guys skiing if you were skiing by yourselves, but you were usually together.
We were.
Yeah.
That's awesome. One memory that is very specific to me, that I love you for so many different things, but one of the things I really, really, really just love and appreciate you for is your willingness to take us to the skateboard park in Juneau, even though it was a place where homeless people, dope smokers, and other sketchy people in life hung out at. However, you were able to see past that and see the value in putting us in a dangerous place, whether it be maybe not because we're around people that were using drugs or being homeless on a box grind, but saying, no, it's okay, go down the ramp, go down, like that's so cool of you. And it's Lord knows what that's done for me today, with wanting to push myself into new places. I think it's done a lot. I really, really, really appreciate you bringing us to a place where people were pushing past fear.
Yeah. Well, if you come to everything with love, you know that those people that are having problems and trying to drown them with drugs or alcohol or whatever, homelessness, they are little boys inside too, that are trying to find their way, and they're trying to heal the pain, and they don't know how. And so they could see you guys sticking your necks out on those ramps and just laughing and having a good time, and they could probably get some joy in their life just from that too.
Yeah. Oh man, I really wish we had more time to talk. We still have 7 minutes left, so don't go yet. But that's gosh, when was that? That was so huge in my life. A couple of years ago. I was maybe 2 years, 1 year ago. I'm not really sure anymore. Time sort of blends together for me. But when I was a personal trainer at the gym in Bozeman, I also did summer camp counseling for 8 to 14-year-olds and 3 to 5-year-olds. And then I was a gym teacher for 3 to 5-year-olds for a semester of school last school year. And when that was, that I was going through a tough spot. I was going through a tough spot in my life, and I still showed up to work with those kids as a gym teacher, and they really brought a lot of joy into my life, and just how they just like never took things too seriously. It was amazing to watch.
Well, that's what I always got from you. From the time you were just a little guy, making fun out of everything, joking and And I remember your dad at your age. He would come out of the bedroom, or no, that was you. Come out of the bedroom with 6 pair of underpants on his head, on your head. Now, or am I skipping a generation?
Yeah, could have been my dad too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Whatever you like to do for fun, yeah, you gave to me.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's it's young people are really cool.
That's right.
Like working with children, like small children, they they have so much curiosity
Mm-hmm.
with life.
Yeah. And they don't have the rules embedded in them, so they can just play from their hearts and their desires to express themselves. And that's
Hmm.
one.
Yeah, it is wonderful. Sorry, did you cut out? Did you say that's wonderful?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I love that too. Let's see. We have time
That
for.
that led me to want to go to Mexico and volunteer in an orphanage where kids have been abandoned and abused, and find ways to bring them their childhood that they would lose in a place that was not bent to nurturing kids. It was bent toward discipline, and discipline that was very hard and didn't teach values. So
Mm,
was I went for 1 year to learn Spanish. I couldn't leave, and so I stayed for 3 years developing a playground and a playroom for the kids. And these tough teenagers, mostly they were little kids, but when I went there, the teenagers were, macho and big boys, and they didn't want to have a woman, especially an American woman, teaching them. And so I said, okay, I'll arm wrestle you. That they could understand. And so they got in a line. There were 14 of them, and I was at the table, and I arm wrestled 13 of them down, and the 14th one got me. And
wow,
that created respect for me.
that's awesome. Grandma, I would love to dive into your time working in Mexico with children. However, we do
Yep.
have 2 minutes and 35 seconds left as it is. So I am going to give you one rapid fire question about Mexico, which is what was the most surprising thing that you learned about working with kids in a new country?
That they could teach me more than I could teach them if I would just be a blank slate and be open and have my heart open. I was going to
Lovely.
go.
You
I
were
was
going to
going.
what?
I was going to get whatever I needed from those kids.
That's awesome. Well, on that note, terrific answer, by the way. You couldn't have said it better. Is there any last things that you would like to say before the show is over?
Um, I'd like to just describe something that they gave me at a birthday party, and it's an apron that they made with just a piece of cloth, and they put their handprints in blue and pink, according to the boys and girls, and they wrote messages to me in the dried prints. And the title of that apron is Love Leaves Tracks. And that's, yeah.
Well, that is truly heartwarming. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing a piece of your life with the audience. I'm sure people will be able to, I certainly have, will be able to grab a lot of good things from this. So I'm gonna shoot you a call on WhatsApp,
Okay.
but this Zoom recording will end now. So bye, everybody.
See ya. Adios.
Adios.